coalitions. Coalitions, by their very nature, are a compromise. They are a compromise of political interests and a compromise of political policy outcomes. Fatalism had set in among ordinary citizens. And let's be honest, none of us could dispute that. They too had come to compromise with their aspirations, whether for themselves and their families or for India of their dreams. There was a feeling that policy paralysis, administrative confusion, quarreling ministers and blackmailing allies, corruption, insecurity, and vulnerability to terrorism, and weak and indecisive prime ministers who acted more as managers than leaders were built into the coalition system. These have become a permanent curse on Indian democracy. A low level of equilibrium of expectations had set in India that taught itself not to think big and think ambitious. The 10 years between 2004 and 14 represented pinnacle, perhaps nadir is the most appropriate word, the pinnacle of this national listlessness and despondency. Popular morale was low, India's people were dejected. It was against this backdrop that Narendra Modi emerged as a compelling all-India candidate for Prime Minister. He took the BJP into new areas, constituencies and social groups. More than that, he ignited hope. Then I come to one of the authors, the one you know better. So I quote from what Dr. Barai says about, at the end of his recollections. He said, Modi has cleaned the lens through which the world now views India. He has given focus to India's domestic priorities and aligned the world not through muscular showmanship, but by connecting hearts and minds to the possibility that India can offer the world. He has, in many ways, single-handedly changed the rules of engagement. Modi has aimed high, and by raising the profile of India, solving historically intractable problems, and by relentlessly improving Indian governance, he has given agency to Indians globally to hold their heads up high too. With 20 years of public service behind him, Modi's record speaks for itself. Whether he will be regarded as India's greatest ever Prime Minister and in turn as one of the world's greatest ever leaders are questions that will be answered at a time when history is ready for it. And there is still some way to go for that. For now, the man, the mission, and the phenomenon that is Modi marches on. Now, in a similar way, but without his expressiveness, I have tried to cover the same ground, but from a much more practical perspective of someone who has traveled with him, seen him on foreign stages, participated in his interactions with foreign leaders. And so I'll conclude my remarks with a paragraph from my own chapter. And this is what I have to say. There is no gainsaying the fact that Prime Minister Modi looms large on the world stage. Definitely, his policies and initiatives have had their impact. But there is also a personal respect that influences the attitude of others. Peers perceive him as quintessentially Indian and respond accordingly. His language, his metaphors, his appearance, his mannerisms and habits, they define a persona that the world has now come to recognize. I recall how fascinated American leaders were about his fasting habits during the 2014 visit, or the interest that Europeans showed in his yoga routine. A large element of this is also the manner in which the Prime Minister carries himself. Not just that, he is equally enthusiastic about sharing India's traditions and customs with his interlocutors. His own intuitive feel for diplomacy also led him to find connects between foreign countries and their leaders with India. Shaping the narrative is always a challenge in the quest for change. Departures from the past are ready targets for criticism in the name of political correctness. Prime Minister Modi has faced more than his fair share of attacks. They could be on his efforts to remedy historical wrongs, disregard vote bank politics, and consolidate national unity. Or at the other extreme, the fact that he chose to elevate mundane issues like toilet shortages and firewood usage to the level of national debate. In a globalized world, it is also inevitable that these conversations would spill beyond our borders. Having weathered many storms during his chief ministership, he is obviously dealing with them with his characteristic confidence. But these discussions also drive home the need for Indians to have an adequate say in the global discourse. So, thank you for your patience, for your attention, for listening to me, these 5 excerpts that I have read out to you. To my mind, though I read about a book and a person, I think I also put in your minds a sense of the changes that have happened, especially in the last